paints your noose like an old man. He's got you thinking about your death and you are frightened.
The hearing of the sounds from hell is very real. And I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hi guys to everyone, I'm Ada from PoisonedRock, and today we have the honor to have with us Matt from CRYPTOPSY. Hi Matt, first of all, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Very, very good. Nice to be with you, Ada. Nice to be with the whole everyone out there tonight. I'm very stoked.
That's great. I want to go straight to the first question, that is of course, the most common one, but you can just answer really briefly because everyone knew CRYPTOPSY. So just a little bit introduce the band and of course the current lineup, the current members of the band.
Sure, no problem. CRYPTOPSY started in late 1980s. Started here in Montreal. They put out an early demo called Ungentle Exhumation, which started to cause up a lot of stir, a bunch of interest in the band. The Montreal metal scene was really starting to take off. You know, Voivod had done some awesome things at the end of the 80s, and then there was Gorguts that was doing some crazy shit. Oblivion, Cataclysm, and then CRYPTOPSY was in that same train. They put out Blasphemy Made Flesh. They put out the legendary CRYPTOPSY album None So Vile in 1996. Yeah. And then the entity that is Lord Worm, the original vocalist of CRYPTOPSY, stepped away from the band. The band went in a different direction and got more of a hardcore vocalist in the form of Mike DeSalvo, who is an amazing vocalist, excellent human. And they put out 2 records with Mike DeSalvo, Whisper Supremacy, and Then You'll Beg. And then Mike had to step away from the band, as is the theme of CRYPTOPSY and most extreme metal bands, because it's not easy to keep everything going and juggling when you have a family and other obligations going on.
Yeah, sure.
Martin Lacroix came into the band for a little bit, filling in on vocals. They put out None So Live. And then Martin left the band, and they brought back Lord Worm for Once Was Not. Once Was Not was released, they toured that, and then I joined CRYPTOPSY in 2007. We put out the very infamous, not very favorited CRYPTOPSY album called The Unspoken King, and I have been the vocalist since then. So it's been 13 years now. I am the longest running CRYPTOPSY vocalist.
So we can say that
of the era.
Yeah, we hope.
Yes. I would imagine so. But I'm still the new vocalist, which is a joke that I like to talk about a lot. The current lineup is also the longest standing CRYPTOPSY lineup to date since 2000 and I always get this wrong, maybe 2011 or 2012, because Jean Levasseur came back to help us write the follow-up to The Unspoken King, the self-titled CRYPTOPSY album. He left the band, and after he left the band, we had Yuri Raymond come in a bit to fill in on guitar, and then from that moment when Yuri wasn't with us anymore, Yuri's from Unhuman, if anyone wants to check that out, that's amazing. It's just been the 4 of us, so we switched to being a 4-piece with Christian Donaldson on guitar, who's been in the band for longer than I have been, Ollie Pinard on bass, who plays also for Vengeful, Curian, and Cattle Decapitation, and of course on drums, the only original member, Flo Mounier.
So that's a really long story.
It's CRYPTOPSY. CRYPTOPSY's got some history.
Yeah, so the right pronunciation is CRYPTOPSY, because every time I saw CRYPTOPSY, people say it's like CRYPTOPSY, and I was like, it's supposed to be CRYPTOPSY. Okay.
You are right. But you're not the only one wrong.
I was right. I knew it. That was right.
I met Phil Anselmo once in Poland at a festival, and he was like, no, CRYPTOPSY. And then none of us in the band corrected him. We were like, that's right. That's how you say our name. Yes, Mr. Phil Anselmo. Yes, you're right.
I mean, okay, so now I will pronounce it better. So CRYPTOPSY are one of the biggest band in the extreme, Canadian death metal. How does it feel to be one of the biggest bands in that scene?
I'm sure it's exactly the same as if we were the smallest. We are never satisfied. We always want more. We want to keep challenging ourselves. It's not about making it or do anything. We just want to create something interesting that we want to listen to and push the boundaries of the genre and keep striving to be better, especially for myself as a vocalist. I've just always wanted to improve, to almost make up for that Unspoken King album. I'm still fighting my own shadows and demons in regards to the reception of that album. I've gotten over it over the years, and I've matured in my response to it. But that was for myself. That's really it. But being the biggest from Montreal, from Quebec, from Canada, there's a lot of heavy hitters from Canada. And CRYPTOPSY is a big band from Canada, but Gorguts is huge. Voivod is huge. There's the newer era of bands that are doing really, really well, such as Archspire, Despised Icon are huge. There's Unleash the Archers on a different, on the metal framework, but not in the extreme technical death metal framework, but they're also a huge band. There's a lot of really cool, Annihilator. Canada has a bunch of great bands. So it's an honor to be friends with them and to be able to hang out with them.
That's great. As we were saying before the start of the interview, you joined in 2007. So when Lord War just went away, you brought a new sound with your voice, or just you continued with that previous sound?
I strived. When I joined CRYPTOPSY, it wasn't that Mark Wahlberg rock star movie situation where I'm like the biggest fan in the world. I wasn't the biggest CRYPTOPSY fan in the world when I got the gig. I was a metalcore singer. I was in a new wave of American heavy metal style metalcore band, heavily inspired by Killswitch Engage.
Yes, true.
Mixed in my previous band, 3 Mile Scream, mixed in with the Swedish, phenomenon, the In Flames, the Soilwork.
Yeah.
I was really coming from that world, and I knew of CRYPTOPSY because 3 Mile Scream had played with them. Christian Donaldson produced 3 Mile Scream's records, so I knew of CRYPTOPSY because he was in CRYPTOPSY. Having played with them, I knew that they were amazing and extreme, but it was a bit too extreme for me at the time. So at the point when I got the call to join the band, or if I wanted to try out for the band, when the band decided they wanted to do something different, that is where that all came from. They didn't want to find another Lord Worm. They could have just picked up a bunch of dudes. They want, as CRYPTOPSY always does, they wanted to evolve into a different direction, which is where the Unspoken King came from. And looking in hindsight and retrospect, the band was a complete mess. All of the members had a different vision for that record, and nobody could get along on what that exactly was. So the Unspoken King is a time capsule of where CRYPTOPSY was. In that point, the reception was horrible. People, it was very fragmented. Either people hated it or they didn't necessarily like it. And now over the years, people are becoming more accustomed to it and are having it grow on them. I swear, every night of a tour, there's always 2-3 people that come up to me and say, the Unspoken King, and I'm waiting for them to say that it sucks. But they always end up saying that they actually do like the record. And if you look through the extreme metal world right now, with bands such as I mentioned Cattle before, Shadow of Intent, and a bunch of other bands putting clean vocals into their sound. Perhaps it wasn't done in the perfect way on the Unspoken King, but it was avant-garde. So
yes, you say the correct term. The correct term is that it's avant-garde, because this is what not the genre. It's not the genre, but it's the term that you're supposed to use for explaining the evolution. Because of course, music changes. Because and this is something that I noticed speaking with different musicians. Because many bands they just aspired, to the biggest, and there is no innovation. You just listen the same, like for example in thrash metal and other type of metal, also in that metal. But putting something new is called, in fact, avant-garde, and it is in a way of evolving, and like music should be evolving, not going back all the time, just moving forward. Because
And we want to
yeah,
be excited. We want it to be something for us to listen to, and for Flo especially, that record, he wanted clean vocals. It's not like I came into the band and I was like, "This is the way it's going to be, dude." And I'm not a
no,
guy like that. I came in and I played the role that I was hired to
yeah,
do, and it took me a long time to actually feel like Cryptopsy was my band. It's taken many years. So now,
and
now,
now you
now
feel
I
it.
now I feel, since the self-titled in 2012, maybe the two Book of Suffering tomes, I feel that we've really made our mark of what the new modern era of Cryptopsy is and
That's
sounds
great.
like, and we understand what Cryptopsy needs to sound like. Will there be clean vocals again? I highly doubt it.
And of course, you saying when you introduced Cryptopsy that there was several lineup changing all lineups. How this influence on the songwriting and the composing? It
Oh,
brought
it's
some
disastrously hard.
issues.
Yeah, it was disastrously hard for a long time, with especially because for a long time at the beginning of Cryptopsy, Steve Tebow wrote a lot of the material. Most of Blasphemy, I want to say, is Steve Tebow. Ungentle is mostly all him. John Levasseur came in and then started putting a little bit more of his input in on None So Vile with Steve. I might be wrong here. I wasn't there, right? And then it all fell into the hands of John Levasseur. So most of Once Was Not, like everything up until Once Was Not, was mostly John's writing. And then
Yeah,
on Once Was Not, John wrote a few tracks and then left the band, and then the rest of it was the band put it together with Alex O'Byrne and the rest of the band, Eric Langlois and Flo, finished up that record. For The Unspoken King, it was, Donaldson wrote a few songs, and you can tell right away which songs he wrote.
yes.
And the rest, and O'Byrne wrote his songs, and Eric always writes a song. So that's where that came from, and it sounds fragmented because of that. And then John came back for the self-titled and wrote the majority of that
Yeah,
to basically put us back on the map. That was his like mandate. He wanted to put Cryptopsy
sure.
back where it's supposed to be, and in his eyes. And he left, and it took Chris a long time to not feel like an imposter writing, he didn't want to mimic John Levasseur, but he wanted to give Cryptopsy fans and the Cryptopsy sound its due diligence and its respect in the style of Cryptopsy. So it's taken him quite a long time. And even to this day, that when we compose and when we write, he gets severely intoxicated so that he can cut off his self-judgment, true hater level, because he's extremely hard on everything. He's a producer, so he's very hard on
Yeah, yes,
everything.
he has to be
So
really.
normally he's like, this sucks. That's his first thought all the time. But if he has a few beers, he starts having a bit of fun, and then we record it like just into the computer, and then we listen to it the next day, and most of the time it's good, and he's happy with it.
That's
But
great.
it has been very difficult to. But we are sort of in the stride of knowing for modern Cryptopsy what
Yeah,
we have to do.
that's great. And of course, I'm speaking in your opinion because you joined later. You joined later. What has changed in the last two albums? That of course you are in the last two albums, and from the oldest one.
I think the vibe of having a live off the floor recording to a to a digital one, that's a big difference. I think also back in
Yes,
the day, what was
yes,
really interesting in those old recordings, and I've spoken about this on my podcast Vox&Hops with a few people, is
yes,
having when they were recorded in the early '90s, the people were playing at the peak of what they were physically able to do.
yeah,
You can hear them struggling and wavering, and the tracks are not perfect. Nowadays, everything is absolutely quantized, perfect. You can do it 1,000 million times, just
yes.
that one
Because
section.
there
So
are a lot
everything's
of
perfect.
programs. Yeah,
And
a lot of
and
software.
and and hypothetically, not everyone can actually play what they're doing. So with Cryptopsy, yes, we can. That's not what I'm saying, but I feel maybe that's the biggest change is going from
Yeah.
writing. And they used to jam so much. Cryptopsy, we don't jam as much as the original lineup of CRYPTOPSY used to jam. They were in that jam room four nights a week, you know. So I think those would be the big changes.
So, and if you should, like, for example, say an album that could maybe incarnate better the sound of CRYPTOPSY, which will it be?
For someone that doesn't know the band,
Yeah, sure.
well, there's so many eras of CRYPTOPSY. So you would have to. None So Vile is an absolute must. It is a
Yes.
classic, legendary, influential album, and I can say that because I'm not on it. It's my band, but I'm not on it, so I can tote it that high. But there's so many bands that have been influenced by it that have you know, become a band because of None So Vile. So it would have to be that one. And then there's also the newer generation of people where they would say Whisper Supremacy, because a lot of these artisan era bands were extremely inspired by Whisper Supremacy because it was something completely different. CRYPTOPSY could have just put out None So Vile Part 2 and hypothetically have become a much huger band, but they decided not to rest on their laurels and do something completely different almost in a different style, like pushing it so much more intense, not resting on a single riff for more than a few bars. Nothing it's catchy, but not in a primal way, the way that None So Vile is. So I would say those two, honestly.
Yeah, perfect. And have you ever find some difficulties to, putting the songs from French to the English, or you just wrote straight to American English?
I am primarily English, so I think in English and I write in English. Yeah, and so is Lord Worm actually. So for him, and Mike DeSalvo was from Boston. So we're all just English people living in a French place. That's all.
So you never mean that French never was like we wanna make a French song we want to write French music, French lyrics.
We've thought about it only because if you write, maybe I think there's a way to get money from the government if you put a French-speaking song on an album. So that would be the only time that we ever thought about doing it. But we never.
But it will also sound weird singing in a with the accent. But
with my English accent, But Despised Icon have a few French songs on their albums, and it's cool. Yeah,
it's amazing. Now I want to talk about what I said you before. Your vocal techniques is really particular because it goes like to the extreme that grunt to the melodic part, and this is something that you studied or just practiced during the year, or it just came spontaneously.
Well, I always wanted to be a vocalist. It really started in the car with my father. My father showed me, Metallica and Iron Maiden and AC/DC, and on the cheesier side of things, which I still love, Journey and Bon Jovi. It was just all about that, So just in the car singing with my dad. The Final Countdown was my jam for probably a whole summer. But I always wanted to be a singer. I was more drawn to clean vocals, of course, being young and not being exposed to many of those things.
Yeah.
I then subsequently became a nu metal child, fell in love with Korn, Marilyn Manson, Slipknot. That I just went through that whole rabbit hole throughout my high school years. And that's when I started joining into bands, but I was more always, like an Incubus style voice. Through then, I got singing lessons one year as a Christmas present from my aunt because she wanted me to keep my voice safe, which I appreciated. And from those singing lessons, I was trained to go to Broadway, which was the ultimate goal for my teacher. I just wanted to protect my voice. At the same time as I'm taking singing lessons, I joined 3 Mile Scream, so that all became a lot more serious. That got signed to a label that was a subsidiary of Sony, I want to say. I might be wrong, or Columbia, I can't remember. So that was all that happening. So Broadway was out the window, and I just wanted to protect my voice. During 3 Mile, I started screaming more, but more of like a Mike Patton inspired scream at first, that evolved into the Kill Switch, into the In Flames.
Yeah.
And then I got CRYPTOPSY, and I was like, how the hell am I going to do this? So
But you
I
did it.
practiced and I tried and I went
You
into the
did it.
studio and did my best. When I was recording the first 3 Mile record with JF Dagenet of Cataclysm, he was
Yeah.
producing it, and I was doing some death grunts in that, and he like looked at me at some point and he was like, you know what, you might be a good death metal singer. So that was probably the first time anyone has ever said that to me. So shout out to JF for having a good ear and picking it out all those years ago. That was like in 2004 or something. So
Yeah.
so from there, once I got into Cryptopsy, it was just I just had to catch up. And my first tour in Mexico, there's footage online. Please don't go look at it. It's horrible.
No,
It
no,
took me a long
I saw you live, so at Summer Breeze, so there
it
was
took
no
me
problem.
it took me a very long time, and from touring and chatting with other vocalists such as Travis Ryan from Cattle. I toured with George from Cannibal Corpse, and just watching people on stage every night and playing around with my voice. So that's really what I've been
Yeah.
striving to do, and it's something that I miss doing because of the pandemic.
Right now, there is nothing that we can do at least, I mean, just wait. And I mean, with of course with your vocal influences, there is like a little bit of changing in the sound. It's like there is a little bit more, we can say, deathcore or melodic in Cryptopsy. This brought some, some how the fan react.
Vocally, or well,
No, no,
what
just in general about the band. They
Well,
just
it was horrible on the Unspoken King. It was we got death threats and people wanted us to die, and
that's right.
we were pariahs. But we handled it wrong, I think, and then as I mentioned before, just the whole evolution of everything else afterwards.
Yeah.
We ended up catching up steam and
Yeah.
you know making it up to our fans, and we know what Cryptopsy needs to sound like now.
Yeah, sure. Of course, now we speak a little bit the influences, the musical influences. So, for Cryptopsies, which are the most influences, like you can say band or just even just genre?
Yeah, but I don't think there is one. That's where Cryptopsy
Yeah.
is we well, not different. A lot of bands have a wide, array of influences, but it's everything, and it comes from everywhere.
Yeah.
Whatever we might honestly, we'll be like sitting somewhere waiting for an airplane or something, and there'll be like an ice machine that's humming something, and Chris is like, oh, and then he records it on his phone, and then he writes a riff to that. It's life that it influences Cryptopsy, but music in general.
Amazing. That's amazing. And for you personally, you mentioned some band before, but if we are going to, just more in particular, I'm just doing these things. For example, picking 5 albums that influenced you. It could be albums, artists, or songs. It's just up to you. That influence since you were a child until now.
Sure. Obviously, the albums that probably led me to being where I am right now would have to start with Korn's first album,
Yeah.
self-titled. It was very important for me growing up and discovering that there was more than just the radio music. And then Slipknot's first record, same thing. It was like Korn, but like on cocaine, just so much more extreme. And then on the brutal side of things, like Cannibal Corpse, Kill, when I got that, just blew my mind how clean George's vocals were and how he was just biting into everything. I loved it. Also, there's always the Mike Patton that has to come up with me. I love him too much. So it would have to be like that first Mr. Bungle. I love it so much. And Maynard from Tool, I have to say something too, that I loved him. I love him still so much. I would probably have to say Enema from Tool. I don't know if that's 5. And on the extreme side again, I'd have to throw out the Harvest Floor from Cattle Decapitation. I remember buying that. I remember asking Christian Donaldson, like, what CD should I buy if I want to, like, this was before the self-titled? I can't remember. I think it was before the self-titled. If I wanted to, like, get better. And that was one of the CDs I picked up, and that's when Travis started doing his weird little clean vocals, screamy thing,
Yeah.
and I remember being just hooked, and then I subsequently toured with them a bunch, and now we're friends.
Yeah. So now I just speak a lot about I mean, you touring like a lot because, as I told you, I saw you in person. So, there is some particular moments, funny moments, or I don't know, a moment that you just remember in particular that, I mean, staying inside you personally.
There's great moments, having toured. I think probably my all-time favorite time on stage ever would be at Maryland Death Fest in 2017, right before that Summer Breeze gig.
Yeah.
We were playing None So Vile in its entirety at Maryland Death Fest, headlining the Thursday night. Me with my whole baggage of from the Unspoken King, and trying to seeking redemption. And there's no better place to challenge, what you are bringing to the extreme metal world
Yeah.
than on stage at Maryland Death Fest. It is one of the pinnacle, most elitist metal festivals in the world, and it was insane. It was just unbelievable.
That's
The
amazing.
energy in the room. It was packed, and then the jumping on and off stage. It was such a great night, and we partied afterwards. It was
That's amazing.
fantastic. And then there's always the special moments of playing South America, and people are waiting at the airport for you. Same thing in
Yeah.
Asia.
Yeah.
Very,
The
very cool, nice feelings. Yeah.
Yes, and if for example, since you were we were speaking about festival, and if you were an organizer of a festival, which band would you bring into the lineup of the festival?
Oh, that's hard. That's a big one. That's a big one. I still think Tool. But I'd like to bring bands from a different time zone, like a different. I don't want to see
Yeah,
Tool now. I want to see Tool like in
the first.
like 96
Yeah,
or something, when he was still angry, and they had like a minimal production. I would like that. I would like to, I saw Black Sabbath, but I'd also like to see them back in the day
yeah,
when they had more energy,
yeah.
which
Well, I
is
mean,
which is understandable because they're
of
they're,
course
they're, you know,
now
they're
that
amazing. They're amazing, but
not that it's impossible.
you
That
know,
so
Bloodbath with Michael Ackerfeld on vocals.
they are a really good band. Yeah, they are
Yeah,
fucking.
but that era, I would like that. And then there's a bunch of like small little gems that I would like to, even to play with, which like Imperial Triumphant. I
Yeah,
love their new record. I love what they're all about. Same vibe, but much more depressing. Bell Witch. I really, really like what they're doing right now. That'd be something that I'd be super interested in being a part of. And then there's like on a different spectrum, like Loathe from the UK. It's like a new modern Deftones. I really think they're super cool.
and we just change a little bit topic because I know that you have a podcast. You have a
That's
podcast.
right.
So
Yeah.
what about that? I mean, this is something new because I think that for CRYPTOPSY fans could be a nice thing to hear. Maybe the singer to having a podcast, and it's something that I never heard from a band that the singer had a podcast. I mean, until now.
Oh,
So
cool. There's a bunch of us actually. So
yeah,
I have a podcast. It's called Vox&Hops. It is I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk about their lives, music, and of course craft beer, because I really, really, really enjoy craft beer very, very much. I started this in October 2018,
oh
and I just released today episode number 186. I love doing this. I love just sitting down and chatting with people
yes.
and sharing a brew. It's something that I would just do naturally and just ask them the most. I've always been interested in asking strange questions that I wanted
Yes.
to know the answer to. And I've been inspired by a bunch of other musicians that have podcasts, such as Jamie Jasta, who has the Jasta Show of Hatebreed. He's got a great, great podcast that highly influenced.
Your
I didn't steal any of his ideas, but the
yeah,
idea of
inspires you.
interviewing other musicians was definitely
Yeah,
stemmed from him. There's also Doc Coyle from Bad Wolves, ex God Forbid, who has a great podcast called The X-Men with Doc Coyle. And there's a huge like, especially because of the pandemic, there's a lot more musicians that are starting podcasts.
Yeah.
So I'm super stoked to be about it. I just got signed to a podcast network, which is very cool, which is a like a record label for podcasts called Sound Talent Media. And they just launched recently with 15 podcasts, and all of the podcasts are actually ran by people involved in the music industry or that are in bands.
That's amazing. Of course, I will put the link on the description on the interview because
Yes, go check it out.
That's amazing.
Vox&Hops.com. That's VOXANDHOPS.com. Go check it out and take a listen. I know I tend to drop 2 episodes a week, one on Tuesdays and one on Fridays.
That's amazing. So, of course, the last question before ending the interview is, of course, the common one. After that, the last album, CRYPTOPSY, there is a new plans, a new albums, or just you are working, for example, on touring. I mean, what are the future plans of CRYPTOPSY?
Well, we were actually in a cottage in the woods writing the new CRYPTOPSY record when the pandemic blew up last March. So we are still working on it, and we are going to release a full-length album, which is something special and new because everyone thinks we're going to be releasing the part 3 of our Book of Suffering EP series, but we're not. We're going to be doing a full length, and it's going to be coming out on a record label, which is something that hasn't happened since 2008 for CRYPTOPSY. So I can't talk about who that is just yet, but it's cool, and we're stoked about it. And the guys were actually writing today some new material, so everything that I've heard is amazing. I have a concept. I know what it's going to be about. It's very pertinent with what's happening in the world without it being, and I had the concept before the pandemic, so it's just everything is lining up to make my concept even stronger. So I'm really stoked about that.
So that's great. I mean, can look forward to hear the new album. And
I'm imagining again, with the pandemic, I can't imagine it coming out before realistically the end of 2021, best case scenario, because you know how things are with everything.
Yeah. Also for live gigs, I think that the sure year, that there won't be any trouble will be 2022.
I
sure.
Sadly agree with you.
Yeah, I saw a lot of festivals changing on 2021, but I don't know. I'm really a huge fan of Summerbreeze, as I told you, but I think they will postpone it again because things are going again worse and worse in all of Europe and in all.
We got to do it right. We have to take care of the people, and it's hard for the bands, and you can't put on a festival like this at a reduced capacity. You need all those ticket holders, and then even worse than that is you've sold these tickets to these people already. So a lot of these festivals are sold out. So how are you going to choose which people don't get to come if you do a reduced capacity?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You can reduce it.
Yeah,
So, because as you saw in many festivals, there are so many stages, so many bands, so many people. It's there is to be completely not COVID free in all the world for having and it's of course an hard time for the music industry. I think for anyone in the world, of course, but. And I saw as myself, even for the smallest band, it's worse for anyone else because they started maybe playing now, and I don't know if they will go too far if they won't be supported. All the time I say to the people on Facebook Lives, on whatever, YouTube, just support the local band, the smallest band, because they won't survive in all of this. Just buy merchandise, buy the album, because if you don't support even your friend that played the music, that the music will just start to collapse.
They might give up. They might give up, and hypothetically, it might not be that project that's going to be their big project, the next Metallica, but the next one might be. So you have to support all these small independent artists, so that they have the drive and the motivation to keep going, to replace the big four, because we need some big four replacements.
Yes, we have big four. We have a big four that is going forever. So we need a new big four. maybe, and there was, if I'm not wrong, an extreme Big Four, something like that
There's
in
been
New
some
York.
negotiations, yes.
No, there was with immolation, incantation, something like that in New York. They call it the death metal Big Four, but it was,
I'm
I
sure
think,
that's up for
yeah.
debate, I think, but
Yeah. Okay, so Matt, we are basically at the end. Just a message to CRYPTOPSY fan and PoisonedRock followers.
Sure. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for following CRYPTOPSY and supporting us throughout all of these years, all of these generations, all of these lineups, all of these eras. We sincerely miss being on the road and playing for you. It is the most special thing that we get to do, and we do cherish that, and we don't take it for granted. These past 6 months have been very difficult, not being able to get out there and connect with all of you. So we sincerely appreciate you, and we are really, really stoked to come back and to hang out with you and play with you again. We got new music coming. In the meantime, go check out my podcast, Vox&Hops.
For sure. So thank you so much, Matt, and hope to see you soon in another, I don't know, Summer Breeze or whatever festival in the world. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank
And
you, Ella.
congrats
Thank
for
you so
your
much.
voice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a
Cheers.
good rest of the day. Bye.
you.
See you soon. Bye.
You can't refuse what the old man whispered to the preacher during the sermon. He's a saint to the fools of the old land, but we can see straight through the tricks that he